I have my hands full overseeing 2 households, but I do quite well.
It's because of my husband's success in trade, as well as the benevolence of God, that my family enjoys the comforts that we do.
As the wife of the patroon, I would expect an invitation to every social engagement offered by those in the highest standing in society. But what, pray tell, can you say of the house they are having constructed? They can't think to rival yours and father's, can they? And my house, the manor house, would be beyond them entirely.
It is not for me to comment upon, daughter.
It does speak to sort of a reaching nature. A country home for Mr. Philip Van Rensselaer. I've heard it said that without his marriage to her, his life situation would be decidedly worse than it is now.
Hush, daughter, she comes. My name is Catherine Schuyler, and my husband is General Philip Schuyler, a Revolutionary War hero. We own a home in Albany and a farm in Saratoga where we spend some of our time. My husband is always busy with political matters and is highly regarded by leading men in New York. And how, pray tell, did you fare whilst your hair was being colored?
If vanity were not considered a sin, I would say that I believe the coloring of my hair will have a beneficial effect on my features overall. But since it is a sin, I will simply say it went well. I am Mariah Van Rensselaer, housewife of Philip Van Rensselaer. My husband is an Albany merchant of note. I have a very large household. I have 7 children. I also have a modest number of household slaves.
Your piety is well established, Mrs. Van Rensselaer. I think it rather safe for you to admit to the pleasure of the hair coloring experience. My name is Margaret Schuyler Van Rensselaer, and I'm blessed to be the daughter of a great man, General Philip Schuyler, and the wife of another, Stephen Van Rensselaer III. My beloved is the patroon, and he holds a significant amount of land in the area. He has more tenants who work his land than I can possibly count, and he has aspirations of holding public office in this new state government.
Mrs. Van Rensselaer, will any of your daughters be attending the dance assemblies in Albany this season?
No, they will not, although my eldest daughter draws nigh the age when such activities will be permitted.
It is a pity that your daughters are not old enough to attend the assemblies, Mrs. Van Rensselaer. My husband has been a member of the board of the patrons of the Albany assemblies. He always ensures the entertainments are appropriate and enjoyable.
Of course, Mrs. Van Rensselaer. Your husband is truly a man among men. We certainly enjoy the pleasure of our country place at his pleasure. A man among men. The patroon is practically a child. He is not yet 23 years of age, and yet to hold such wealth and power. We know full well that we occupy our little plot of land at the pleasure of the patroon. And should that pleasure change, we could lose Cherry Hill in a moment's passing.
You're quite right. He is just such a man. And of course, you should feel the generosity of his nature so keenly, as you and your family, as you say, enjoy the comfort of your little country house at my husband's pleasure.
Did I think Margaret's comment was a little unfortunate? Yes, I did. Mrs. Van Rensselaer, have you visited recently my brother in Craylow across the river? How do they fare?
Very well. At present, all are in excellent health, which I believe is due to the excellent weather that we have been having.
The weather has been very delightful. I look forward to the upcoming nuptials of my brother, John Bradstreet, and hope the weather continues to be kind to us. With so many out-of-town guests coming, it would be most disastrous if weather made travel unthinkable. Don't you agree, Mrs. Van Rensselaer?
That was badly done. Mrs. Van Rensselaer was not invited to the wedding.
My good husband Philip and I were not invited to attend the marriage of General and Mrs. Schuyler's son, John Bradstreet. As if I would want to attend such an affair anyway. Whilst it is unchristian to engage in idle gossip, I will admit I have heard my fair share of stories about Mr. John Bradstreet, and let me just say, if he had desired an introduction to one of my daughters, I would have forbid it. I would have.
Of course, General Schuyler knows of Mr. Van Rensselaer's many mercantile obligations, and how dreadfully difficult it would be for him to attend, especially at this time of year.
It was is beneath my mother to offer excuses. Surely Mrs. Van Rensselaer and her husband, however worthwhile a man he may be, surely they did not expect to receive invitations to my brother's wedding. That is not the way of things. To be sure, Mr. Philip Van Rensselaer is my mother's first cousin, but his standing is well below hers. He is practically landless.
Quite so, Mrs. Schuyler, quite so. My husband is very preoccupied with his business endeavors at the moment, as well as with the building of our new home. Time is a luxury that he can ill afford.
And yet how fortunate you and Mr. Philip Van Rensselaer will be when you are able to enjoy the fruits of his labor at your little country home. I would that my life were as simple as those I see around me. I would be content if my husband were spared the heavy burdens of his place in society and politics. I confess I envy you your simple pleasures of life.
This is a very uncomfortable moment for me.
Next time on Housewives of 18th Century Albany.
I protest that I do not understand what I have done to merit your condescending manner and your cutting remarks. I am a gentleman's wife, and I demand that you treat me according to what my age and station in life demands.
Your station in life, need I remind you in whose hands the deed to your little country cottage sits?
Please, please, ladies, this is most improper. Cease this quarrel.
Country cottage? Why, you poison-tongued viper!
How dare you talk to me, the wife of the patroon, like I'm some common housemaid? Everyone in Albany knows how much your husband wants the title to the land he calls Cherry Hill, and how he pesters my husband for it.
This is most improper.
Your husband
Cease
is nothing.
This isn't their world. They don't belong here. Come see their world this fall.